Good afternoon, students. My name is Ananias Akwetirera. Welcome to Bachelor of Education in Senior Primary, BESP. I'm going to be your tutor for the subjects Natural Science and Health Education 3. So welcome to this presentation. It's very important because it's going to prepare students for their examinations. And I wish you all the best. In our course outline, we cover Unit 1 up to Unit 11. So we continue with Unit 1. Unit 1, we look into issues and skills related to sexual health education. Specifically, the danger of pornography. The danger of pornography specify or it includes addictions, distraction of intimacy, decreased excitement and satisfactions, displays warped thinking, and desensitizations. For example, if students they happens maybe just to be into pornography, it will also take up their time instead of studying and concentrating in their educations, because this thing is very addiction. It's very addicted. People will be addicted, and they will just want to watch these things. It's also just make people, let me say partners at home, not feeling like they want each other satisfied, so they are not satisfied with each other, simply because when they relate pornography to their own really what they are doing at home, it won't sort of match, it won't match. That's why it's very discouraged to just follow pornography. Method of maintaining sexual health. We talk about abstain, faithful, and condom use. Abstain, it means that you just take care of yourself and take yourself away or from sexual activities. Faithfulness means that you must at least trust each other with your partners, and don't have more than one partners when you are doing sexual practice and when you are in a relationship. And condom use also, this is also one of the physical barriers which is used to protect people from sexual transmitted diseases such as HIV and AIDS, gonorrhea, and other diseases. That's why it's very important to apply those three measures. Sexual abuse. What are sexual abuse? Sexual abuse is unwanted sexual activity with perpetrator using force, making threats, or taking advantage of victims not able to give consent. For example, an adult is when they get involved into sexual activity with a child or a person who is under the age of 18 in Namibia, that is regarded as illegal, and it's also sexual abuse because such a person cannot take decisions or consent on their own whether to do sexual activities or not. Therefore, a child sexual abuse, this kind of abuse is a form of child abuse which an adult, as I said earlier, or an elder adolescent use child for sexual stimulation. We continue with Unit 1. What are the risks of sexual practices? Having sex at an early age is very risky. Why? Because at this age, a person don't know how to take decisions, what is right, what is wrong about sexual practices, and people are not even experienced or know even danger of involved in sexual activities. Hence, it's very dangerous to involve yourself into this kind of sexual activities at earlier age. Having multiple partners, sexual partners, is also very dangerous because this is one of the main factors why, or contributor why people they got sexual transmitted diseases such as gonorrhea, HIVs, and others. Having sex while under the influence of alcohol or drugs, this is very dangerous because individuals they won't be able to take a good decision, maybe to use condoms or not to do sex at all, or even just to decide whom I'm going to do sexual activities with. And unprotected sexual behavior, like not using condoms and those kind of things, they also expose individuals to this kind of risky of sexual diseases. There are different steps involved in decision making in educations. Namely, there are into steps. 1, define your problem. Number 2, gather information and resources. List options. That's number 3. Weigh and compare outcomes. Make a decisions. Make a plan of actions. And finally, evaluate your decisions based on the prioritizations of whatever you find out in the problem. Okay. Let's continue with Unit 2, Sexually Transmitted Diseases, Teenage Pregnancies, and Skills Related to Sexual Health Education. Students, you must be able to differentiate between HIV and AIDS, and you must also know which one bring the other one. Is it HIV which is leading to AIDS, or is it AIDS which is leading to HIV? And also just know the abbreviation. For example, HIV stands for Human Immunodeficiency Virus, and AIDS stands for Acquired Immunodeficiency Syndrome. Okay? How HIV is transmitted from infected person to uninfected person. Sexual contact. When people are doing, let me say adults doing sexual practices without any protection, for example condom, they are likely to get HIV or AIDS. Because this virus is likely to be in the sexual in the semen of a man or in the fruit of a lady. So when they are doing sex, they are likely to get this. Needles. When, for example, might be health workers or anybody inject an infected person and also they prick themselves with a needle, they are likely also to get the virus. Okay? Mother to child, especially during breastfeedings, during birth, is also one of the way a child can also get infected. That's why it's very important that when a mother is pregnant, they must go for a HIV test, and if they are positive, they must take their medicine so that they can prevent their children from getting such an infection. Okay. Subject, learning outcome, and assessment method. Learning outcomes. What are the learning outcomes, and what is important of formal assessment? Learning outcome is the measure of what is expected from the student to grasp or to get to understand and know is really what the student gets to know. And this is done through formal assessment by after giving lessons, you give formal tests, examinations, individual group assignment to students to assess whether they have gained what they're supposed to get in order to ensure that their learning outcome is achieved. The importance of preparing a clear marking scheme. This is very important because sometimes, let me say, tutor or a teacher, you go on a sick leave or maybe you're just on a normal leave, and other person have to mark your examination papers. So if you really prepare you clearly clear your marking scheme, it will help another person also just to follow that one and mark the papers on your absences. And this is very important. Let's look into Unit 3, how to perform some scientific processes. Giving you, let me say, an example of a triangle, I might ask you to calculate area of the triangle. Using the formula of an area, which is half times base times height, you will be able to put in the information given and you get the answer for an area. In this case, area is equal to 120. The possible hazard in the laboratory while learners are conducting the experiment. General laboratory hazards, those means, let me say, equipment and other things that are in the laboratory that maybe students are likely to touch or to fail in. Let me say electrical shocks or those other things. If there is not, maybe the electrical box is not properly closed. Chemical hazard, let me say, maybe hydrochloric, which is used in the lab during maybe any certain test, for example, maybe spit on a student's eyes or the skin. It's also one of the chemical hazard. And the physical hazard, it can be any items or physical item which is maybe standing in the lab, which maybe can cause trip and fall of a student and cause an accident or injury while students are doing their practical in the lab. So, what are the importance of group activities among learners at school? Group work ensure teamwork. Group work, it makes students to combine their different views and ideas together to discuss and come to the good or to get a very good answer than just an individual answer or answer from just an individual person. It also enhance leadership, and it also make students to be prepared to work with others, which is called teamwork in the futures, because when the students they graduate, at the end of the day they are going to work in industries whereby teamwork is required. Unit 4, let's look into building blocks of metals and features of mixtures and solutions. Properties of these three metals: liquid, solid, and gas. What are the differences? The solid particles are packed closely together. There are very strong force between them, and they cannot just move freely because of the strong force attractions between them. For the liquid particles, they are closer together, but they are not so closer together as the one for solid. And there is also a weak force of attractions between the particles. And the particles have more energy than solid. However, they are also less than for liquid. No, sorry, pardon me. Particles have more energy than for solid, and then less than the one for the gas. Because the particles of the gas are far from each other. They fit in the shape of the container or any object given. They have very weak forces. Almost no force exists between the particles. And particles have the very most important or strong movement, or we call it kinetic energy. That is their differences. So students must be able to differentiate them when they ask you to do so in the exam. We continue with Unit 4. Let's look into water vapor and steam, that is boiling. Specifically look into boiling kettle, for example. What are the behaviors of the particle of a gas when it is heated? When the particles are heated, the kinetic energy applies. Particles, they move far away from each other in a very fast motion, and they expand. And they cause these particles to have just low densities, unlike the density in liquid and in gas, in liquid or in solid form. Atoms. What are atoms? Atoms are all metals made of tiny particles called, atoms are metals that are made of tiny particles called atoms. Atoms are made of smaller particles: protons, neutrons, and electrons, 3 of them. As you can see in the images or the picture, it is indicating that an element, it have electron. No, an atom have electron, it have proton, it have neutron in them. So you must be able to know how many numbers of electron in an atom, neutron in a certain atom, and their relative mass for each atom. Okay? And this will bring us to also look into the periodic table, which indicates, for example, which period is a certain element falling in, which group a certain element falls in, their relative mass. You must also know their characteristics per period, their characteristics. And for example, how is their boiling point, their reactivity, conductivity to electricities, their densities in relation to their groups and to their period. Okay? Let's move into or continue with Unit 5, aspect of solar systems and the air around. Many years ago, people, they were wondering if there is evidence of life on the moon. That's why Neil Armstrong was the first scientist person, to travel to the moon with a main reason of going there to assess if there is evidence of life in the moon. Importantly, let's also look into the reactions between ions and oxygen. So when these reactions happen between ions and oxygen, it forms what you call ion oxide. Please take note of that. And what happens to the anhydrous copper sulfate when it is added to the water? The white anhydrous copper sulfate will turn to the blue color. Then that's when you can see or know that it was added or there's water is present. So the color change, right? The test to prove an unknown liquid is water, you have to use cobalt chloride. So the blue anhydrous cobalt chloride will turn pink when water is added to it. Then you will know that liquid is water. Okay. Weather, materials, and the rusting processes. Rusting is reactions between ions and oxygens. It is mostly happening in the coastal areas of our country, Namibia. And this is one of the important chemical processes which is happening. And the weather itself, which is foggy, and or let me say to excess of water and the oxygens, it makes this process to be fast, and that's why rusting is happening that side. So, but by applying painting to metals, it can also sometimes at least help or prevent rusting to fast or to increase. Unit 6. So then let's look into Unit 6. The analysis features of force and energy. Force is a push or pull of an object. For instance, if you open a bottle, that is what you call a push force. And if you stretch a rubber of a catapult, that is what you call pull force. Let's look into the sample calculation. I might ask you, for example, to calculate weight for a wheelbarrow with a mass of 11 kg. Using the weight of, let me say, applying the formula of weight, which is mass times gravitational force, you get the answer of 110 Newton. Gravitational force here, you have to use 10, not the other way around or at the other number. We have to use 10. Take note of that. Law of conservation of energy. It states that energy cannot be destroyed or created. It can only be changed or converted from one form to another form of energy, right? If I ask you to define energy, or how about energy? Energy is just ability to do the work. In simple terms, that is what is energy. Unit 6. What are the effects of force on object? Force can change the shape of the object. For example, if you press something or you squeeze something, let me say a plastic bottle, it will change its shape. Force can change the speed of a moving object. For example, you broke someone who was pushing a wheelbarrow. He is likely to move maybe slowly because you are applying your force just to reduce his speed. And that's why the force can also change speed. It can also change the direction of the moving object. For example, in soccer or football, you receive a ball which is coming from another direction, you kick it to the other direction, you change the direction. So force can change also the direction. Force can also cause the object to move. If you push a car which is maybe stuck somewhere, So that is also effect of the force. And force can also make the object to turn. For example, you are opening the bottle, for example, of water bottle, any bottle. You make that cup to turn. All right. Renewable energy versus non-renewable energy. Renewable energy is the energy which cannot be finished. It's the energy that can come over and over and over again. And the non-renewable energy is the energy which can be finished or replenished or finished within certain period of time, or get used up over time. Okay? Let's look into tidal power versus geothermal power, renewable energy sources. Tidal power, this one happens when, for example, water from the river to the ocean moving on a higher motion through a turbine, it generates, or through a generator, it will generate electricity. When the constant water is moving from maybe a river to the ocean, and then that is how it makes electricity. While geothermal power, it happens when water, cold water in the pipe, they are pressed, let me say, or at hot locks. Those hot locks, they make that water to turn into steam. Then the steam turn the turbine, and then when the turbine turn, it generates an electricity. Okay. So let's look into energy conversion. Students, you must be able to complete certain energy. For example, if I ask you in terms of chemical energies or electrical energy that is happening, you must be able to complete it. For example, chemical energy from the car, what does it involve? It involves movement, heat, and sound. Okay? Electrical energy, it involves heat plus light. You must know those kind of energy. Unit 7, properties of light by using different apparatus. We have luminous and illuminated subject. Luminous object, these are objects that gives off their own light. For example, candles, sun, fire, etc. Right? And illuminated or non-luminous object, these are objects that does not radiate or give their own light. For example, the moon, tables, those kind of material, they do not give their own light. That's why they are called non-luminous object. Let's look into divergent, convergent, and parallel or beams of light. When layers of light spread out from one point to another, is called divergent beams. And when a layer of light is traveling and it moves closer together, or it comes together, is called convergent beams of light. Parallel lay, these are kind of lay or light that move at the same distance. They do not come together, and they also travel in a straight same direction. We continue with Unit 7. It's also important for students to know at least what happens when light falls on different objects that are translucent, transparent, and aqueous object. Transparent materials, these are objects or material that allow light to pass through it completely. For example, a clear window for the house or for the car, right? Translucent object, this object that allow certain percentage or certain light to pass through it, but not 100% of all the light to pass through them. And aqueous objects, these are objects that does not allow any amount of light to pass through them. For example, a table or a tree, those are aqueous objects, right? What are the importance of practical and experimental learning activities in terms of promoting good learning? Practical learning, it enhances or it makes students to grasp or to practically know what they have learned into class theoretically into practical real life. Okay. It also makes students to remember very well in terms of science, because science, you don't only need theory, it also improves practicality, it improves memory. That's why practical is needed. For example, in engineering, after you teach students on how to do certain chemical analysis or measurement, students also need to go in the field and do that. Through that, they also practically get what they learned in class, and they are likely to do well in the industries after they graduate. Unit 8, Forms and Features of Electricity. Method to discard an electroscope. You can discharge an electroscope by touching it with a conductor. Just by touching it with a conductor, you discharge it. Or simply just touching it. Huh? Static electricity versus electric current. Static electricity, these are just a kind of electricity that are built on the surface of materials. For example, on a clothes. When you touch your clothes or any maybe table or something, then you receive just a sudden sort of small kind of electric shock. That is those are kind of static electricity. They are not so dangerous, but they appear and they are there in life. Why current? Electric current. Current electricity is the flow of charges. Okay? This is what you call electric current. About the conductor itself, a conductor is a material that allows electricity to pass through it. For example, aluminum and other materials, those are conductors, and they are widely used in industries because they are good conductors of electricity and other materials, right? Electron current and conventional current. Electron current flow from negative to positive, while conventional current move from positive to negative. That is vice versa. Just know about the direction of the flow of the current, then you'll be able to differentiate them very well. Current flows. It is very important for students to know that current can only flow when the circuit is closed. When the circuit is not closed, when it's open, electric current will never flow. So when you open the circuit, then it means there won't be any electricity flow. Let's continue with Unit 9, student. Some features of plants and animals as living organisms. We have to look into flowering and non-flowering plants, with their definitions, differences, and similarity. Flowering plants, these are plants that produce flowers. While non-flowering plants, those are plants that do not produce flowers. Their main differences is in the terms of, or the way they do what we call reproduction. Flowering plants rely on pollination for productions. And the non-flowering plant, they rely on what we call dispersion process. That is how they reproduce from generation to generation, and they do not extinct. Similarity is that they both have what we call vesicular bundle, and they both have what we call sporophytic. plant body. Let's look into the life cycle of mammals. Mammals involve or have life cycles which covers birth, growth, reproductions, and death. Birth is when the offspring is come onto earth. Growth is when a child is growing from earlier age, puberties, adults, until elders. And reproduction is when they produce one child to another child. And death is when our members or human beings, they are no more longer living. So those are the four life cycles of mammals. The ways animals respond to their stimuli and their environment is very important, because without this one, animals, they can suffer or endangered in their environment. So with this, we have to look into how do they detect their stimuli and others. So animals, they respond or react appropriately to the external changes or environment through or using stimulus. So the ability to detect and respond to changes in the environment is called sensitivity or irritability. All right? A variation in a condition which can produce a change in activity of part or the whole organism is called stimulus, while the change in activity by organism itself is called response. Please take note of that. Those parts of the body which receive stimulus are known as receptors, while those parts that brings out response are known as effectors. Common external stimulus which brings out response in organisms are temperatures, pH, humidities, rates, mineral salts, etc., etc. Unit 10, the structures and the functions of three systems of human body. We look into nervous system, excretions, and the digestive system. The two differences, let's look into two differences, processes involving or involved in digestive system. We have mechanical processes and chemical processes. Mechanical processes mainly starts in the mouth, and chemical processes also happen in the mouth, but mostly in the stomach, in the gastrointestinal organs. So mechanical involve chewing, grinding, churning and mixing of food products, and while chemical, this involves the actions of enzymes, bile and acid to just dissolve and destroy food into the absorbent state. So mechanical processes, this involve chewing, as I said, grinding of food by the teeth, and also the churning and mixing of contents of the stomach. Chemical process, as I said, this one enhances the food to be digested and also allow absorptions of food in the small and also large intestines of the human body. And this one, they also do it using the help of gastric juice, pancreatic juice, etc. Let's look into the reflux actions and the reflux arc. What is the difference? A reflux action is a spontaneous, rapid, and predictable motor response to a stimulus, while a reflex arc is an anatomical route which connects the component of reflex, namely the receptor sensory neuron, the control or integration center within a central nervous system, the motor neuron, and the effector itself. Unit 10, continue. Let's look into the enthusiasm from the teacher, why it is important as a strategy in teaching. Importantly, a teacher's enthusiasm for a subject can play a very main role in learners liking or not liking or preferring a specific subject and their memory of that specific subject. Therefore, it is very important for teachers to try to be creative, enthusiastic, in order to make enhanced learning about the human body system a great adventure. So with this, it will make students at least to learn or not to learn and like the subject based of that enthusiasm from the very important teacher, because teachers, they have main influence to learners' education. Cooperative learning and group work is important learning strategy. Group work. Group work improve long-term memory, because when learners, they go together, they will remember, no, I was with this colleague and this one, we're discussing about this. They are likely to also to remember and also improve their memory. Group work is also at least enhance readership into students. It's also at least prepare them into what you call teamwork, because when students they graduate, they are going to work in organizations whereby teamwork, readerships, professionalisms is required, and for them to perform well, they need to do it through group work that they have to commence at school prior to their graduation. Cooperative learning. This emerged at a time after classroom teaching had been largely teachers and centered for many decades. Cooperative learning presents an opportunity for learners to be organized into a purposeful way to learning within a topic. It also at least helps students to ask specific questions at a specific time in a specific lesson during lecturing from the lecture at the same time, for them to get to understand the content very well and clarify very well. The importance is that these types of learning present group work where learners with different learning abilities can socially interact. Learners, they have different learnings and coping strategies, but however, if they are involved in the group, they are likely to learn from each other. A very fast learning learner and also moderate and weak learning learner is likely to learn from the other one through interactions through group work. And that is why group work is very cooperative and is very helpful. So that's why it is encouraged to be applied in school. Unit 11. Features of the environment in terms of ecosystem, water, soil, and air. My students, can we please look into the terms of ecosystem, habits, community, population, species, and ecosystems? What are their differences? Ecosystem is a community of living organisms, says animals, plants, microbes, in conjunction with a non-living components of their environment, things like air, water, mineral, soils, interacting as a system. These biotic and abiotic components are regarded as linked together through nutrient cycle and energy flow. That was very important, that in each ecosystem, energy flow must be understood and also must be maintained. And ecosystem needed to be kept. And in ecosystem, plants, animals, living, non-living organisms, they all need each other and they depend on each other for food, for reproductions, and everything. So that's why ecosystem is very important, and it does not need to be disturbed in any way. It needs to be protected. So after talking about ecosystem, what about habitats? So these are ecological or environmental area that is inhabited by a particular species or group of animals or plants or other types of organism. So, in other words, this is area where, let me say, certain plants or animals, they are growing or they are staying. They are staying in a place, in that place is called habitat. Furthermore, to clarify, it is a natural environment in which an organism lives, as I said earlier, or a physical environment that surrounds, influence, and is utilized by species of certain or variety of populations. Now, what about community? Community usually refers to a social unit larger than a small village that shares common value, but it can also be referred to as a group of interacting living organisms sharing a populated environment. So what about population? A population is all the organisms of the same group or species who lives in the same geographical area and are capable of interbreeding. For example, population of wild animals, populations of human beings in a certain area. So that's what we refer to a population. Species. Species, plurally species, is one of the basic units of biological classifications, a taxonomic rank. A species is often defined as a group of organisms capable of interbreeding and producing fertile offspring. We continue. The short-term and the long-term effect of exposure to poor air quality. Short-term, it contributes to, let me say, pneumonia, bronchitis, asthma, and long-term effect can cause heart diseases, lung cancer, respiratory disease, and other respiratory conditions. That's why it is very important to maintain our environment and avoid the air pollution, because with the long exposed breathing of polluted air, it really affects human being. It might even reduce our life expectancy. And nowadays, cancer cases and others, they are increasing, so we should really avoid the air pollution. How humans have changed the tropical rainforest ecosystem. This is done the destruction of tropical rainforest to create farms by grazing lands or by creating places maybe to put up their own businesses, sport lands, and other things have also just changed the climate pattern. It also just destroyed the ecosystem itself, and also maybe it also just disturbed the ecosystem and destroyed some living organisms in the ecosystem, and it's also disturbed the water sources within an ecosystem. In turn, altered the climate pattern have changed the way animals and plants are distributed in different ecosystems, and even also changed rain pattern. Like in Namibia, we no more get our usually normal rainfall pattern. It also could be attributed to the destruction of rainforest. With these students, we end our presentations. I hope this presentation was very helpful for you to prepare for your examinations. I wish you all the best, and please, if you should have any questions or clarity that you might need, please contact me as your tutor, because I'm here to help you, my students. You can contact me on my details that are there on the slides, first slide. Please, all the best, and good day.